Welcome to Smarter Circuits, the podcast. I'm fixing a hole where the rain gets in. Today's main topic is going to be things I won't review or even dignify with a video. But before I get to that, first, old business. I had mentioned that I was going to do a Monday members mini podcast, so if there are any members listening, I am going to attempt to do that this Monday. And basically, what that's going to be is more detail about where I am in production with things, and I'll also take some requested, I'll take some questions and answer them on that podcast. I expect it to be like 10 to 15 minutes. It's not really a big deal, but it's going to be a thing I do. I'm trying to come up with fast but still at least entertaining or valuable things to do for the members. More of those things. Anyway, the other thing that I want to talk about is the Shelly entry, the Shelly contest. I am not going to be entering in the Shelly contest, and I'll talk about why momentarily. But first, I actually wanted to say there are some awesome entries already, and I honestly believe that there are enough of them that they would have beat me right out of the prize tiers anyway. So, and I did actually want to just read a couple of them, just the titles, because this first one I have actually wanted to do similar, and it's automating my workshop, making a 220 volt cam vac dust collector smart, which that's fantastic. I have yet to install my dust collector in my shop, but when I do, I would like it to be smart. And I'm actually gonna take that extra Rube Goldberg step when I get there. You'll just have to stick around for that. Hopefully this summer, maybe spring. Anyway, and then there was this one: turn any three-way table or floor lamp into a smart three-way lamp while still using the original switch. And it says allows you to schedule, use voice commands, add to scenes, and not worry about the switch position. And there's a video, apparently. That one's pretty cool. There's a smarten up your generator, which I think is interesting. I'm actually going to go back and check that out if I have time. And then there's this one. This one actually, when I first read it, it's pump house management. And when I first read it, I thought it was referring to a pool pump house. But it's not. It's referring to a well pump house. And I used to have well water, and it can be a pain in the butt, and anything that makes that better is okay in my book. And then there was another one that was did I leave the oven on? Let's see, it's basically using an energy meter to say, hey, this thing's still pulling 100 watts or more. But anyway, so those are really cool. There's a bunch of other ones. There are a lot of them that are cool. Those were just the ones that immediately caught my eye as I was just perusing through the list. But there are many more that are worthy. You should go and check them out on the Shelly USA subreddit. Okay, so now one more thing about the Shelly thing. Because I wasn't able to enter, I do actually plan on doing some more in-depth how-tos for Shelly devices, because I kind of feel bad that I didn't enter, and that I haven't been as active on the Reddit as I wanted to be. The reason why I say those things is because I do actually really like Shelly products, and so when I have an opportunity to sort of participate in the community that they have started to develop, I like to take those opportunities. Unfortunately, life is busy. So that brings me, segue, to the reason that I did not do the Shelly entry, or the Shelly contest. And that reason is because, and this is not, so I'm about to tell you a couple things. This is not a plea for sympathy or anything whatsoever. It's just circumstances, and they do kind of suck, but they're circumstances. They're being dealt with. So first and foremost, everything is fine and being dealt with. But we are without a furnace at the moment. Our furnace is not non-functioning, but is dangerous because the heat exchanger has cracked. So it will let carbon monoxide into the house if we use it. So we're not using it. Instead, we are heating with a mysterious heat source I will say, that's worth about 3,000 watts or so. And then several quartz radiant heaters. If you are going to get space heaters of any kind, get radiant heaters because they are the most efficient electric heaters. They give off the least waste energy. And what that is just basically the glow that you see when they're on. Otherwise, they're great. Now, is electric heating the most efficient? No. And does it have some drawbacks as far as comfort level? It can if you do not offset those. But we have been doing, and it has been working out pretty well. It is cold in this room right now, and I am in cold things because we did not need to heat this room, and I did not want to run the heater while I was recording the podcast. So, anyway, so if you're watching this, you know. If you're listening, I'm sitting here in a zip-up hoodie and a scarf that I made. And here's another little kind of related thing. The heaters have all been modified to use Shelly 1PMs with add-ons so that I can use the DS18B20 temperature probes, which are like my absolute new best friend. And I love the Shelly add-on. I am going to do more in-depth things about the Shelly add-on. I want to do so many tricks with it. It's just a matter of finding time to do all that. So, and that's definitely not going to happen during the holidays. Or probably even the early part of the year because, well, you got to catch up with all the stuff that you didn't get to because of the holidays. So yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, right. So a lot of the heaters that we're using, the ones that have just, your regular low and high setting, I have modified so that the Shellys control them. And I'm able to monitor it in Home Assistant and all that sort of thing. The other thing that's really nice about that is I actually already have little 500 watt boost heaters in every room that I was using prior anyway to just sort of relieve a little bit of the strain on the furnace, which worked just fine. But these, I needed a little bit more oomph without the furnace. But it's been working out pretty well. The Shellys control all of that, and I can cycle through them. I can sort of, so like right now, between the two bathrooms and the library, if I try to heat all three, it blows the breaker. So I have it set to just sort of, it's not like a timer. It's like a timer of you can now, do your thing. So it basically turns on the thermostat for each device sequentially, turning the others off as it goes, so that it basically says, if you need to run right now, go ahead and run right now. If not, and there's a little bit more logic to it. If not, then it basically concedes its time to the next device. So that's kind of neat. I like that I can do that without. I don't even have to use Home Assistant in order to do that either, which is kind of neat. I might do a video on something like that later. Anyway, okay, so that brings me to new business. Obviously, I have sort of, organized a little bit better. The studio remodel will begin next week. I don't know what all that will entail. I don't know how long it will take. I don't know if I'll be able to do videos during or not. So all of that is going to be, you find it out as I find it out in real time. But there are some things that go along with that I wanted to talk about. Well, one thing specifically. I plan to dismantle the pool table that's in there, although even if I don't, I still have to deal with this. My retro collection is very large, and it's not any one specific category, so it's sort of difficult to, I guess, move all at once. I am considering selling my retro collection, or maybe displaying it again. I don't know. I have a lot of retro PCs. I have a lot of retro consoles. The last time that I displayed them, I destroyed what was admittedly not meant to be a shelf in the first place. So I don't know, or I may store the stuff. The problem is I don't have a safe place to store them presently in the house. I have some room in the basement, but a lot of the stuff would not be very happy down there. So, still have to figure that out. If you have any thoughts on that, feel free to comment. Because, yeah, if you're interested in what I have in my retro collection, let me know and I will send you a list. I have to put one together anyway so that I can start to value what I have. And the reason that I'm doing that is not that so that is not related to the situation in any way, shape, or form. That is simply because I have too much crap and I've got to get rid of it. And I realized I don't have the spirit of collecting that I used to. Quick aside, I had a house fire long time ago, like 13 or 14 years ago, I think. Something like that. And I lost everything. And I collected a lot of stuff at the time. And a lot of it, so I had a lot of vinyl records. A lot of them were rare. And I had a lot of retro PCs. And quite a few of them were originally mine when they were new out of the box, like my Trash 80. So I lost all that, and then I decided at some point a few years ago that I was going to start collecting again, but it's just not the same, and so I just sort of, lost steam. I still want to keep a few of the pieces because they're sentimental, but for the most part, I think I might either get rid of it or permanently display it if I can do that. Anyway, moving on to the main event, since I've been, babbling for 12 minutes already. Things that I won't review or even dignify with a video. But here's what you really need to know. I have a list. Projectors are the first thing. There are a lot of people who do reviews, comparisons, etc. of projectors, and I have a view on projectors that is possibly controversial. I don't know. It may spark some debate or argument or something, feelings. I don't think projectors are really worth it. I don't think they're all that great to have. If you have a theater, an honest-to-God theater, that's, multiple road, tiered seating, chances are you have quite a bit of money and you can invest it in a professional projector and probably even a professional to install said professional projector. And sure, if you build that to spec and you build the room to spec, you'll probably get, what you want out of that. And part of that is also the experience, I realize. But if you're not one of those, and if you're trying to do it on a budget as it is, it may not be worth doing. There are enormous televisions. There are televisions that may suffice. And the reason that I'm saying all of this is because a lot of people try to go bigger by using a projector. And you also may be losing quite a bit because in order for a projector to give you the best quality, there are a lot of very precise circumstances that must be near perfect in order to get that performance. One of them is, of course, the proper darkness. Now, it's not just a matter of the room not having light or letting external light in. It's also a matter of what inside that room reflects the light that is being reflected off of the viewing screen. And will it alter the color? Which is another thing you have to consider. I see all of these people talking about projectors, but I want to know what their screens are. Well, I don't care. But I don't see videos specific to screens, and you could absolutely make a video specific to screens because you have to take into account so many different variables when creating your projector screen or purchasing one. One of those being color quality, true color quality, as well as the resolution that it can support based on the basically the roughness of the surface. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, basically. And you're going to spend a lot of money. If you think it's worth the experience, I don't, I'm not saying that you're stupid or anything, and I have a projector, but my projector costs like $90 and it's VGA and it does what I want it to do. I even project it on a sheet. That's how little I care about the image quality. It gets the message there. So, in my opinion, wasting time on doing a video on projectors, I guess in my opinion, doing a video on projectors is a waste of time. Owning a projector to a certain degree is a waste of time. And that brings me to the next thing, actually, and that's, another thing that I want to talk about real quick about the projectors is the ability or inability to project black. You cannot do that. Now, in order to have true black on a projected image, where you must have a white surface in order to see the other colors, there has to be one thing, and that is as close to absolute darkness as possible. You are literally going to get a little bit of gray just from the scatter of the light in the air off of the screen. Now, that's negligible, hardly noticeable. If you can make a room absolutely dark and you can make sure that every single surface in that room is matte black, as close to absolute black as you can possibly get, which you could paint the whole thing in something like Vanta Black if you have enough money. But I don't recommend it because it would be ludicrously expensive. And it's not necessary to a certain degree of performance that you would feel good enough. If you can get the room to be dark enough, again. And if there are no colored reflective surfaces, because all of those things are going to affect the image quality. But with a TV, they're a lot more forgiving because they're designed to be used in a variety of rooms and conditions. Now, there's still some, specification that you want. There's still an optimal viewing distance and angle, so on and so forth. And if you're looking for things that are that good and that clear and that specific, you want the television anyway. You want the ability to have true black. That by itself is, in my opinion, a good enough reason to go with a backlit screen rather than a projected image. Especially in a device where the backlight can selectively turn off where the black should be, which is a thing that we do now. And that brings me to smart TVs, which is another thing that I won't talk about, nor will I compare or do a review of. And there's a few reasons. One is there are a lot of them. And a lot of their features, in my opinion, are fairly universal, or at least so trivial it doesn't matter if they're different. Most of my televisions are Rokus, just because they are. Just because I was like, you know what? The first one worked well, I'll get another one, so on, so on. I have some Chromecasts, I have some other devices, but for the most part, they all kind of do the same thing because I access mostly the same services from all of those devices. So the rest of it comes down to the absolute specifics of the screen as a monitor or television, right, without the smart part. And I'm really not into doing that product review either. So, do your research. Find out what the best brands are, the most reliable, the longest lived, with the specifications that you are looking for the space. and purpose that you that you that you have. Um, Now, there are a couple things that I will say are absolutely necessary, and there's something that I think is absolutely not. As a matter of fact, it's to be avoided, in my opinion. The things that are absolutely necessary, good backlighting, good color range, good brightness, good contrast. And you can look at the numbers of all of those. You can figure out what the scales are. You can look up what what you should be looking for. That's all actually pretty easy these days because we've been doing it for so long. Frame rates are important up to a point. In my opinion, there is actually a point where they become detrimental. And that brings me to the thing that I do not like at all about modern televisions, and that's dynamic motion compensation. It sharpens motion blur. It adds information in that isn't there. And what it ultimately ends up doing is making everything look like it was shot on a Sony Handycam. Everything looks like a 1990s soap opera, and it's awful. If you're somebody who likes that, I think you're weird. I mean, I don't hate you, but I think you're weird. I think that whole thing is weird. But the most frustrating thing in the world is if you're going to have it on the TV, fine, for those people who may actually enjoy it, or that maybe there's circumstances when it's better, like maybe for sports, for instance. But don't turn it on by default, right? Because you're ruining movies. I actually went over to my son's house one day, and he was watching a Marvel movie, and I honestly thought that he had just left the TV on, and there was a soap opera on, until I saw a superhero, and I was like, "Oh wait, I think this isn't The Young and the Restless." Anyway, the next thing that's related to that I'm not going to talk about, not going to do a video or review on, for reasons that I'm going to explain. Audio equipment. I will not talk about media components like tuners and such. I will not talk about component stereos. I will not talk about preamps or amps unless it's, just sort of in the context of I'm using an amp, and what I'm using, be it good, bad, or whatever. The thing that I will talk about eventually, though, in that category, speakers, horns, speaker cabinets, drivers, exciters, all of those things, because when I was younger, when I was in college, I used to install high-performance car stereos as a side gig to get some walking around money. And one of the reasons that people came to me was that I would make custom fit speaker cabinets. And I knew, the right air volumes and everything else to have, and the right impedance to wire up all the amplifiers so that you would get the best quality and the best performance out of the speaker boxes. And so I may actually do that one day. And I like exciters because I'm a gamer, and sometimes exciters just make it that much better. An exciter, by the way, if you don't know, is a thing that basically vibrates a surface. There are a lot of them that purport to be like surface speakers, and that kind of works, but the real purpose of an exciter, if you get a proper one that can go down below the audible range, is to get vibration that's down below the audible range or just inside it, and to help you feel it physically, right? Because it kind of puts you in there. One of the things that makes live is not just hearing what's going on, but feeling what's going on, and exciters help you do that. So I will talk about those things. The next thing that I'm not going to talk about, and I hope this doesn't bother anybody that I'm doing this, like what I'm not going to talk about, but the whole point really is the reason that I'm not talking about them is important to the channel, right? And the next one particularly, well, the next two particularly, because they are the absolute worst offenders when it comes to everybody just keeps churning these out. And it's not even just that they're churning it out, they're repeating themselves over and over and over again, just for the sake of keeping content going. I understand the need to survive as a YouTuber. You feel like, okay, got to constantly, and you do to a degree, right? But maybe, I don't know, try harder. Robot vacuums and mops. A robot vacuum is a robot vacuum. There can be quality differences in the things that matter the same way they do in a vacuum cleaner. But if you find a robot vacuum cleaner that does the vacuum cleaner part well enough, the rest does not need to be complex. You do not need a Roomba. Are those features nice in certain circumstances or in very large areas, like, the navigation and all that? Maybe. But I have had a Eufy, middle of the road Eufy at that, robot vacuum for 5 or 6 years, and it's fantastic, and it still works just fine, as long as we keep everything clean and swap out the consumable parts when they wear down. And that's been fantastic. And that thing really, it just kind of does random movement. It can do, perimeters and that sort of thing, but all things that can be done with any wheeled robot with some sensors on it. Like, it's got some infrared headlights, it's got a bump sensor, it's got an edge sensor. That's all it really needs to have. And a robot vacuum is marginally better than a vacuum. The thing that I like about a robot vacuum is that it's constantly removing the dirt rather than letting it accumulate. And that's good. However, when it comes to robot mops, I think that that's excessive. Unless you have a really big area and you don't have the time to deal with it, or staff, I guess, I don't know. I can see it, but other than that, you're adding a lot of extra stuff to a mop. A mop. Like, at least a vacuum cleaner was already almost a robot. But a mop? The only animated mops I know of were, made by Disney. Anyway, so not going to talk about those things because I think mops are a waste of resources. I think most robot vacuum cleaners, as long as they're not just cheap piles of junk, are pretty much the same. They do the same thing. They offer the same conveniences. Self-emptying ones, I don't know. Again, I feel like you're using an awful big machine to do such a simple task that you could just do in a minute or two. But that's just my opinion. And far be it for me to harp on anybody for being lazy, because I am lazy. I pride myself on my level of laziness, because as it was pointed out to me by a colleague, and I've said this before, I'll probably repeat it again. The best engineers are the lazy ones, because they don't want to push the rock up the hill. So they're going to figure out a way to push the rock up the hill by doing the least amount of effort whatsoever, which requires a lot of mental effort. But there you go. There's never a free lunch. Okay. The next and single most heinous smart home device that I will not do a review of nor dignify with a video is the smart universal remote control. The universal remote control itself has always been a thing of sort of mystery to me, because as useful as they are, particularly in the 90s when everything had its own remote because that was neat, somehow they still managed to accumulate themselves. I remember my mom had at least 4 universal remotes. And what happened was you'd buy a TV, you'd buy a VCR, you'd buy a DVD player, and then you'd have those 3 remotes and you'd say, okay, I'm going to get a universal remote so that I can do all 3 of these things with one. So you do that. And then you lose it. So you buy another universal remote. And then you find the other universal remote, but you lose one of the original component remotes. So one of those universal remotes becomes the de facto remote for that device that's missing the remote. And eventually, maybe something like, I don't know, kid goes off to college, you send that device with them, you send that universal remote with them, because it's the only remote that controls that device now. And eventually this sort of thing just perpetuated itself over and over and over again. And remotes were like they were the 3rd most prolific thing to packing peanuts and AOL CDs. So already they're kind of weird. I understand their purpose, and even to some degree, like, their necessity. But smart remotes are not necessary. Even if it has a microphone on it, get a better array, get a better microphone, or get better triggers. If you're automating things, what do you need the remote for? And if it's for like audio equipment and that sort of thing, just use the damn remote that came with it. How often do you really need to do that? Or walk over to the thing. Again, far be it for me to harp on people for being lazy, but man alive, those things are so overly novel. They're a novelty novel. Like, it's crazy to me that these things are even a thing. I really do believe that. Don't get me wrong, again, I don't hate you if you have a real reason that I just haven't thought of for having one of those smart remotes. Fine, I can't think of one. I would never need that in my home because I just have a Roku remote. And so here's another interesting thing. My Roku remote, despite them being different brands, the remotes are interchangeable. I don't know if that's true all the time, but mine are, and that's fine. And honestly, if I needed to, here's the best smart universal remote in the world. Let me just grab the most important smart universal remote in the world. Your phone. I have a Roku app. Not to mention the fact that my home assistant will even control my TVs and such. So I do not understand the need to have a universal remote. As a matter of fact, I will be doing a video next year at some point of a device that I'm going to build that eliminates your remotes. Basically, it's a central remote station. It's a universal remote that is controlled via programming rather than being a button remote. And that's to smarten up things that maybe aren't already smart, that require an infrared remote that you'd like to be able to automate. Sound bars, things like that. I don't know. But I am going to do that thing eventually. So, yeah, hopefully I haven't offended anybody too much about the smart remote thing, but they're just, I don't know. I am perplexed by them. I do not think that they are necessary. So that was basically all I had about the main topic. And so now I would like to, in this whole new order of things being organized and all that, before I end the video, I will give a channel update. Right now, because of the same reasons that I did not do the Shelly entry, I have not made a whole lot of progress on the protocols or integrated circuits videos. But I am going to be getting back to some of that this weekend. So hopefully I might be able to shoot something the week after next, after I get some of the remodel done in the studio. I don't know. I have no idea what's going to be happening, but I will try to keep you guys apprised however I can do that, podcast or, posts or whatever. And then, of course, I probably won't have a video until after the new year. I really want to, and I'm still going to try to, but you can probably expect the next video reasonably, reliably, sometime in late January. I'll try. I will do it in January. You will definitely get a scripted video in January. I'm not gonna go a whole month without doing it. And that's pretty much all I have. So, thank you. If you hear my voice right now, you're still along, and I do appreciate that. We all have an unknown total supply of minutes, a limited supply, and you have spent some of yours with me. I really sincerely appreciate that. That is very cool. And I hope that you will join me next week as I continue discussing smarter circuits.